Welcome to video 8 here. We are going to move on to more elaborate, BIM measurement here. We're going to use the model maps functionality in Costex. Previous to this, we extracted quantities based on the BIM import template. These templates are constructed by Costex to extract quantities from the model based on the naming conventions in Revit. So you can see from the model tree here that when you extract quantities with the BIM import template for Revit General, you'll get these kind of formulated naming conventions with quantities against them. We really had no hand in how that output is constructed. It's essentially, an algorithm written by Costex to export those quantities in that particular format. Model maps give us control over how those quantities are exported or how those quantities are generated by using different object properties and mapping those object properties to certain fields. So we're going to start with creating a model map first. For the moment, I'm actually going to get rid of, and it's actually got in my version here, that standard folder. You can actually right click the folder and click on delete folder, and it'll delete the GFA dimension there as well. Click on model maps, and I already have a model map in here. In fact, there could be quite a few depending on what desktop you're using. But insert a model map by clicking the little plus on the top right hand corner, and let's construct a model map for the walls. Give it a note if you want to and click OK. Now we're brought into a different functionality here in Costex. It's almost like its own little program within the Costex program. You've got one tab called model map, and then we got a number of different icons within that tab. We got available to us the model tree. We got this mapping definition and certain fields within that mapping definition tab, and then we have the actual schedule that opens up with the actual model itself. So if I want to see, maybe for example, I want to click doors, I'll see my doors, internal and external doors there, and then that's a representation of the doors in terms of all the object data in the schedule. I'm going to scroll down in my model tree down to walls, and you'll notice walls are, well, a folder name walls and a basic wall subfolder. Well, because there's only one subfolder, all the different walls there are in that basic wall subfolder, and as a consequence within the actual parent folder of walls. So I can construct a model map for individual walls, or I can construct model maps for different folders within the model tree. I'm going to, in this one, it doesn't really matter because they're all within the same subfolder. I'm going to construct a model map, or at least a mapping definition, within this walls category. So once I click the walls folder, I'll have I'll have access to all the walls in my viewport here, and then all the applicable objects will be in the schedule. So I'm going to use the column headings because that essentially is my object properties, and I'm going to map these column headings or object properties to my mapping definitions here on the left hand side. So starting with the comments column here, if you can remember back from a couple of tutorials ago, we input national standard building elements or Irish national standard building elements into the different objects of the model. I'm going to use that now, and I'm going to categorize my folder based on that comments objects. So this should create a number of different folders when I create dimensions based on those national standard building elements. To do that, I left click, hold down the left click button and click the heading name, comments, hold it down and drag and drop it over, almost like you're drag and dropping a dimension into the workbook, and release it. So you can see now if I click the little preview, and I actually do kind of go back and forth here quite a bit just to see how it's constructing. Once I click preview, I'll see that all my walls will be divided into those categories. Now right now there's no names in here because I haven't really constructed it yet. Okay, so my dimension group, I'm going to use the type name, and again we actually changed those type names in the Revit application to be more applicable to the actual makeup of the walls, because we're getting solid objects here rather than actual breakup of the different layers of those walls. So that's quite handy there to have, because I'll be constructing my bill of quantities elements based on that makeup. So I'm going to drag and drop that type name into my dimension group, and if I click preview, I actually have a breakdown now of the different objects or different groups of objects within the different categories. So clicking back and forth between the mapping definition and the preview tab is quite useful. I'm going to leave the measurement type and default display as automatic for the moment, and I'm going to start mapping dimension properties in the schedule here to dimension fields here in the mapping definition tab. So I'm going to correspond the length to length, area to area. So starting with length, just scroll back. It's in alphabetical order, so I can see that length is there. I'm just going to drag and drop that in and populate it in that field. Area, it's alphabetical order, so area is at the start. Release that into area, and into volume, look for the volume, drag and drop that in. Okay, preview, I can see that I've got different areas against my rising walls, different areas against my external walls, and different areas associated with the different categories of objects in against element 22 internal walls and partitions. So I'm happy enough with the way that's constructed. I don't have to save anything, it kind of saves as it goes along, but I'm going to close out of this model map. I'm going to just make sure that the model is completely on view, and I'm going to close down the schedule by clicking the schedule like we've done before. So right now my entire model is open because I've selected that drawings folder, and I'm going to import that model map. Now it's only going to import in objects associated with the model map, so only the wall objects, even though I have the entire model on view. So what I'm going to do is quite similar to the BIM import template. I'm going to click import drop down. So instead of the BIM template, I'm going to import using a model map. So this is going to extract quantities based on the way I've constructed this model map. Click the actual associated model map that we're working on and click select. So now it'll go through its calculation, and we can see that we've 3 new folders in there: substructure, external walls, and internal walls. Hover over any one of those items and I've got some secondary quantities in there like volume and length. Now just to make sure I'm happy enough with those measurements, I'm going to check or validate maybe 1 or 2 quantities. Let's say, for example, I'm looking at that 331 meters squared. I also want to see where those walls are in this overall building information model. So I can right click on the walls, and at any stage I can isolate that dimension group. So I can do this for any dimension really. So right click, isolate the dimension group, and there's my 331 meters squared of walls. So just to see the makeup, or of that type of wall, just to see the makeup, or at least the breakdown of those objects, click the dimensions tab, and you can see as they're turning blue, you can see the makeup of those 8 walls. So maybe select the first one, and it's that wall there, and we can even right click this one dimension and isolate it. So that is that one wall, and that one wall has a measurement against it as 83.49 meters squared. So let me just double check that by doing a little kind of manual measurement on it. Clicking the drawings tab, I'm going to measure the distance across the top. Click and click, so that's 14.32. So just make a note of that, and I'm going to measure the distance in terms of the height from edge to edge, and that's 6.08. So 14.342 times 6.085 is 87.27. So that is not what that is, but I can see that there's an opening here. Again, a quick little measure distance on the opening, 2.1, and I think it's a standard double door opening, by 1.8. That's 3.78 meters squared, deducted off the 87.27, and we get an area of 83.49. Now I could do an area check on that, whereby I add a dimension, or add a dimension group, just say area check. Okay, like I've done before with the strip footings. I'm going to drop it in to my external wall. Well, I'll leave that as is, area, and click insert, and just do a little point mode measurement. And quite simply, this could be just click, 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 and then omit that op. And just see, does this equal 83.49? And that was that one wall there, 83.49. So a little measure check on one wall, and I'm kind of happy enough that all those areas, well, they should be correct, and they don't include the opening. If I need to include that opening in the overall area, I'll have to add it back in, possibly in my workbook. I'm going to create a new model map. This time it's going to be a little bit different, a little bit more elaborate than the last one we constructed for walls. I'll call it Foundations 2 because I have already a Foundations model map in there. Again, if you're working on machines or computers in the college, there could be quite a few there because they exist on the actual desktop itself unless you export them and import them back in. They are separate files, so just bear that in mind, that that's something you may have to do when you're exporting your building, export your model map separately. So click OK, and I'm into my model map functionality. Scroll down to structural foundations. I'm going to create mapping definitions for the structural foundations. Now I can create one for that parent folder there, structural foundations, and it'll govern what's essentially below it in subfolders. But I'm going to do two separate mapping definitions. I'm going to do one for the wall foundations and one for the pile caps because they're slightly different. If they were kind of similar, like I could extract quantities in a similar way, I would do one mapping definition and keep it simple, but I'm going to do two. The first thing I'm going to do is create a folder with the comments, I suppose, categories, which is my national standard building elements. So again, clicking between preview and mapping definitions continuously, you'll figure out whether it's shaping up okay. Comments, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a subfolder. Now to create a subfolder, you are going to add something or add a field and open your quotation marks, /, which is the little slash in the bottom left side of your keyboard, close your quotation marks, click the plus again. Now that seems a little bit elaborate there, but you will get used to it. That's essentially creating that little quotation marks, / quotation marks is creating a subfolder, and the subfolder I'm going to create is the level 1 category here. So if I just drag and drop that level 1 in there, I can see by using those characters and maybe even make a note of them, I now have structural foundation subfolder. In the dimension group, I am going to use wall foundations. Now what I could do here is I could add my level 2 heading to my, let's say, my type name. I'm just going to drag and drop that over. So I could do something like that, level 2 plus type name preview. So my dimension group name would now be wall foundations, which was the level 1, and they're all the same. And then the type name was split into 3 different categories. So it would basically break up my dimensions for those walls into 3 different categories. You can see that these are kind of joined up against each other. So it's one item plus another item as such. If I want to create space between those two, I can do something similar than what I've done up here. Plus, open quotation marks, maybe a few clicks of the backspace on your keyboard, close quotation marks, and click the plus again. So hopefully now you're kind of getting a feel for the fact that once we kind of create quotation marks, we're creating text. It can be space, it can be X, it can be dot, whatever works for you. Click preview, and you'll see now that there's a little bit of space and it looks probably a little bit better there. Now I can do that, create those 3 categories, but if you can remember from your 2D measurement, there was no need for that because our foundations, be it our concrete foundations or our excavation or foundations, are all measured as one item. So I don't need to create that. I'm going to delete it. It was just there to essentially show you how to create kind of spaces and add definitions together. and I'm going to leave that as is. So I'm going to start now populating my fields. So in the length column here, I'm going to just drag and drop my length column heading. So column heading, drag and drop it as if you're dropping in a dimension, and release. Scroll down now, get back to the area, scroll down to volume. So I'm picking the easy ones. I have that volume calculation. I'm going to drag and drop that over. It's worth noting here, for example, if I click one of the items here, it actually turns, you can see it turns green, showing me which item it is here. Let's say, for example, I right click one of those scheduled items and click object properties. This is just to show you available to me in terms of dimensions. I have length, volume, width. I don't have a height in here, and I don't have an area in here. They may be there, and if they're there, they can be used. But for the moment, I need to use these three and maybe extrapolate from them to get some of the other dimensions. So that's what I'm really doing here. I don't have a lot of dimensions available to me. I may have, depending on how it's drawn. I'm going to go back to the area. I'm going to copy that volume. And to get an area, I'm going to divide it by, and if you can remember from previous tutorial in object mode, I actually measured the height there. I don't have a height dimension. If I did, I would drag and drop it like I did the others, but I can see that that's 0.305. So my volume divided by my height will give me my surface area of those dimensions. Scrolling down now, weight. This is essentially my reinforcement. My weight value is going to be my volume. Again, I can copy and paste or drag and drop it over. Weight value volume times 150 kg per meter cubed times 0.001. We've done that calculation before. So that 150 times the meter cubed, the concrete, times 0.001 to change it from kg to tons, and type in open quotation marks T close quotation mark. Now it's important to put in the quotation marks in there, otherwise it won't recognize it. Custom name, let's do excavation. So again, because it's text, I need to use quotation marks. The custom value, I'm going to take the volume divided by the height, will give me my area. And if I multiply that then by 0.55, which is the depth of my excavation. Now, I can't see that in the building information model. Just take it from me, the depth of the excavation is 0.55. So if I divide my volume by its height in terms of the height of the concrete and multiply it by 0.55 in terms of the depth of the excavation, I'll get my excavation meter cubed. So meter cubed, close quotation marks. And the last item in this definition is I'm going to do the true length like I've done before in the object mode. And the true length was my volume, drag and drop it over, divided by the 0.305, that'll get me an area, divided then by the width, and the width field is available for me. So I'm just going to drag and drop that over, and I'm going to click unit of measurement and type in its meters. So just having a look at my preview just to make sure everything is okay. Substructure, structural foundations, it's measuring it as an area, we can get to that, and I have my secondary quantities in there: true length, excavation, weight, volume, area, and then there's the length as well. So clicking back in mapping definitions, I'm going to change the default display from automatic because it is taking that area there, and I don't want that. I want it to take the volume of the concrete. So again, preview, and I can see that that's 16 meters cubed with its secondary quantities. I'm going to move from that now. I'm happy enough with that. As I type that information in, it's saving as it goes along. Click on the pile caps. I can construct this one starting from scratch, or I can click back on my wall foundations, right click it, copy the mapping definition that's in there, click back on pile caps, right click it, and paste that mapping definition in there. So it's not going to be entirely the same, but my folder, my dimension group are going to be as is. So again, you can see that that's all fine. Now we've got pile cap in there. In fact, the volume is correct. It's just the secondary quantities need a little bit of manipulation. In terms of the length, I actually am looking, because I'm going to use this length calculation for the perimeter in terms of my formwork. So I'm looking for the perimeter length of those pile caps, and that will be length plus, if I scroll across, I should have a width available for me, width, and then open brackets or close brackets on one end, open brackets on the other, times 2. Okay, moving down, area, well, that one is a little bit more simple than the previous one. It's just length times width. Okay, that's good because it's 1.8 times 1.8. Volume is fine. I have a volume in there. I can use it as is. Weight, because the weight is derived from the volume, that's fine. Leave in the tonnage. The excavation slightly different. I'm just going to delete what's there, and I'm going to use my area length by width. Copy, scroll down and paste. Length times width, put brackets around it, and the length times width times the height of my depth of my excavation. The strip footings were 0.55. Take it from me, the pad footings are 750 millimeters, or 0.75 of a meter deep. Also meter cubed, and there is no true length calculation to be kind of checked, because they're not long lengths, and I have the length times the width and they are correct. And that is pretty much that one. If I preview, hover over it, I see there's a weight in there, an excavation, a volume, an area, and I've got my length calculation. So there I created 2 mapping definitions. Well, one derived from the other. I didn't do the other one from scratch, which is the pile cap. I kind of used and copied what I had already done and made some changes. So as I said, it saves as you go along. I'm going to click out of that model map, and I'm going to go back to my, well, I suppose my home screen. I'm going to click on the model tree and make sure that the entire drawing is highlighted or selected. Okay, now I'm going to import that model map in, and hopefully there'll be a number of quantities that populate into this, well, appropriate fields. In this case, it'll go into substructure somewhere. It'll only bring in what I created a mapping definition for. So if I import a model map and it's just the foundations, it should just bring the foundations in, even though I have that entire drawing or model on view. So import, like we've done before, BIM dimensions using model map, foundations 2, select the right one, make sure that that's correct, select, and in comes your foundations. There we have it there. We've got pile caps rectangular, and we've got our wall foundations, and we've got all the secondary quantities associated with that. It's worth taking a look at the difference between the pile cap dimension and the strip footing dimensions in both the object mode measurement and the model map measurement. You can see that they're the same in terms of volume, and if you hover over and have a look at the secondary quantities, I think they're all the same. The only thing that's different, I believe, is the fact that I measured excavation in this one and I didn't in the object mode measurement, although I could have included it there. I just left it out when I was doing it. So I'm just going to move on from that. I'm going to quickly do another model map. This time I'm going to do one for the doors. Click OK. This is just a bit of practice more than anything else. So I have the entire drawing selected there. I'm just going to click the doors. Right now I've got the ghost view open. If I want to close that down, I kind of see them there pretty much in the sky as such. With ghost view on, I can see where those doors really are located. I've got a number of external doors and internal doors on the ground floor, and I've got a few single doors on the first floor. So with the doors selected, and this will create a mapping definition for all those doors because they're part, or at least their folders are part of that parent folder. Starting with the folder name, I'm going to use the comments. Again, the comments are essentially where, whether the doors are external wall completions or internal wall completions based on the National Standard Building Elements. In terms of dimension group, this looks like it's fairly appropriate. I'm going to use the description of the door, and I'm going to add some text to this, if you can remember how to do this, plus open quotation marks, a few spaces maybe, close quotation marks, plus again. So by using those characters, and hopefully you're getting a little bit more used to doing that, you can create a little bit of space and add another string to that text. So what I'm going to add is the type name. If I just scroll across here, where is it? There it is. I'm just going to drag and drop that over. So preview, I can see, well in this case I might have to drop that little crosshair over a little bit more to see exactly what's happening there. That's the description of that door, and then space, and then essentially that's the type name. Same goes with this. It's actually a little simpler. Internal single door, and the type name gives me the dimension. Unfortunately, there is no dimension in the type name of that last door there, so I may have to actually go and look at those dimensions in the schedule to get them. But they are available to me, those dimensions, as heights and widths, etc. in the schedule. They just weren't in the name or description in the name. So scrolling down here, what fields am I going to populate? I'm going to start actually with the wall area. So this is really a vertical area. What I might look for there is the actual wall area, vertical area of the door. That quite simply will be the width of the door times the height of the door. So bring that across. Again, there's quite a few object properties in this. Okay, took me a while to find that. Height, drag and drop that across. So width times height will give me my wall area. Scroll down, and my first custom name, I might create one called frame. I'm going to copy the wall area and I'm going to paste it in there. Now my frame is going to be my width instead of multiplied by. It's my width plus my height, but my height is times 2. Okay, so we've got the head detail there, which will just be the width, and then we got the 2 jambs, which would be the height times 2. Unit of measurement, meters, and then the next one is my architrave. Okay, and my architrave, quite simply, I'm going to take my frame length and I'm going to put brackets around either end, and I'm going to multiply that times 2 because my architrave is on either side of the door, and that one is going to be meters. So preview just to see, am I happy enough with that? The secondary quantities are in there, but I've 0 meters squared there, and that's because it's picking up on the area here that has nothing. So I might change the automatic display because it's not quite getting that right to the count. So I'm going to count the doors, click preview again, make sure everything is okay in there, and it is, and I've got my frame length and my architrave length and my wall area, so all is good. Happy enough with that. Close and go ahead now and import the model map. Some objects have been hidden. This is fine because all my objects are available to me there, the ones at least I want to bring in. So click yes, click doors, select, and now I've got a few more categories in here: external wall completions, internal wall completions, and I've got my counts of my doors, and I've got some secondary quantities. So that concludes my video for building measurement, or BIM Building Measurement 2. Thank you very much.